Another guy, he's a biologist that used to work here, and after he had a few drinks, he used to clean all the bones for the government that are stored at the U of A. And he said basically they have Sasquatch. And
They have Sasquatch bones?
They have Sasquatch. He says, I'm not allowed to talk about them. There's things live in our forest. And I talked to some other guys, and they said, no, he mentioned Sasquatch. He said the word. And he was out hunting by himself, and he turned up dead. All of a sudden, one stepped out on the road. And he said, look, kind of. He says, it wasn't a big one. He said, walk across the road. And he said, well, that's something I'm not going to tell anybody I saw. He said, at one point, there was a big female with a small young one. And the young one was so small it walked on all fours. And it walked out, and then another big female came out. And she had a juvenile with her that was limping, like it had been injured. And it was more like an adolescent, maybe not quite a teenager sort of thing. And it was walking on its hind legs. So it was two mature females with two children of different ages. No male, just that. But what it is whenever you find those great big tree structures, like, you find a lot of the small ones, it sounds like that area is where they all gathered just before they went up into the mountains for the winter. Like a bunch of them will show up there. And that's why those tree structures are so big there. And that's why the area hasn't dried up. It's just that they're painfully aware that people are actually looking for them there. I says, I know a guy who's been in the woods for 50 years. He'll say he's seen 2 in his lifetime. And then I'll talk to another guy who's been in the woods for 50 years. He's seen 2. Now I know about 4 of them, but it took 100 years of you guys being in the woods. The only thing we have over top of them is our ability to compile knowledge. That's the only way we will. Like the BFRO database, it's brilliant. All the information is what you need. I wish they wouldn't hold a bunch of it back, but they do. But the thing is, that's what we do because they run faster, they think faster, they're way stronger, they're prescient. They have one-on-one. Their advantage over us is so astronomical that it's almost comical. So if you're going to walk around in the woods, and think you're fooling those things, the only person you're fooling is yourself. I make certain sounds, I go certain places, and I make sure that I'm easy to keep track of when I'm out there. We're daytime creatures.
Yeah.
And the Sasquatch is a nighttime creature. It has unbelievable night vision. Unbelievable. One of my friends was hunting in Alaska, and he asked about if they had any stories. The same trapper. And she says, "You mean Bigfoot? He goes up in the mountains in the winter. He should be coming out any time." And that's how it is. Like, they all gather where those big tree structures are. They say, "Okay, Frank's here. I don't know where Bob is. Maybe something happened to him." They basically gauge who's left, and then when the snows hit, they go. And then the big ones come out and they gather food and bring it back to the females and the smaller ones. Because the trapper says you will not see a small track or a medium track until March.
So they're in a cave or something.
Well, and then we found out there's a big cave up in there, and it's full of animal skeletons, like full.
Yeah.
And and like when I say a cave, they described it as not as big as the Cadman caves, but not a lot smaller. So that's a major cave. There's a lot of I forget how many undiscovered caves they think there is. A lot. And these guys all want to be the latest person to find a cave, but you got to be really careful, because as soon as you discover a cave, like that one they call the Sarlacc pit. Did you hear about that one in BC? Well, when they came out and told everybody about it, the local native band claimed it, and no one's allowed to go in it. Now, I would love to go there because it's a natural sinkhole. And if you're ever going to find a Sasquatch skeleton, that's where you're going to find it, on the bottom of that one. Maybe even saber-tooths. There's a lot of prehistoric animals in those things. So, but right now you have to, and they wanted to know where I found it and circumstances. I said, "Are you willing to put into writing that it could be what I said it is?" He said, "No." And I said, "Well, what are we talking about then?"
Yeah, you're wasting it.
I know what it is. You don't want to believe me, or you don't want to admit that you know too. I really regret taking that sample into them, because you go into these stupid labs and they'll say, "We even tested hair that was purported to be Sasquatch, but it turned out to be buffalo." And I want to go in there and say, what about my sample? Why don't you use my sample as an example? Let me tell all the people here. I brought in Sasquatch DNA. I know it's Sasquatch DNA, and these people didn't know what it was. But there's another guy, he's a biologist that used to work here, and after he had a few drinks, he used to clean all the bones for the government that are stored at the U of A. And he said basically they have Sasquatch. And
They have Sasquatch bones?
They have Sasquatch. He said, I'm not allowed to talk about them. There's things live in our forest. And I talked to some other guys, and they said, no, he mentioned Sasquatch. He said the word. And he was out hunting by himself, and he turned up dead. But I mean, I knew, and it was two very prominent policemen that introduced me to this guy. And then, of course, I know game ranchers that used to hear these stories. So I he's gone now. I can't talk to him, but I really wish I could have, because he seemed to want to talk about it. So I tell people, when I tell them things, I says, I'm not telling you to believe me. I'm telling you to listen to me. Okay? Now, if you really are curious about this, research it yourself. Hear what I have to say, but don't take it as gospel. Just keep looking. And it gets to the point where, after you hear the same story 100, 200 times, you have to start thinking, wait a minute. Because I have people tell me, well, 90% of those stories can't be true. And I said, did you just come up with that number? I said, I'll tell you what, the people I talk to, from what I can gather in knowing people in my 58 years of existence, is that 99% of them are true. I said, if the odd one gets through that isn't true, I don't know about it. I said, because nobody has anything to gain by telling these stories, and if they were the kind of people, you'd already know they were a liar before they told you.
Yeah.
But the thing is, almost all of the people, they have everything to lose by telling you this stuff, I knew he had a story because of the way he was acting, so I just kept on. And he said that finally, he was on the Wapiti River, just by Grand Prairie there, and he was walking down the river, say 15 years old or something. He said he got a weird feeling, so he looked across the flat, and he said there was a big reddish brown colored bear. He called it a bear. And he says, as soon as I looked at it, he says it screamed and it charged me. Screamed. No bears don't scream. And he said that he fired 3 shots before it turned. And then he started to go white. Then he started to shake, and then he lost his composure. And I had to sit with him for a bit. And he kept, like it was like PTSD.
Reliving it, right?
It was, and he kept saying, I'll never go back there, I'll never go back. I said, at any time that this bear was coming towards you or running away, was it ever on all fours? And he just shook his head. But anyway, obviously they told him it was a bear, and that's how he recounted the story. But don't ever make fun of somebody. Listen to them. Listen to what they have to say. And just put it in the archives. All of a sudden something will pop up where you realize that person is telling the truth. Now I'll give you an example. Now, remember that one woman that she says she has that habituation. She's down in the States, I forget her name. And she says they used to unscrew the lid on her horse feed, eat it, and then they'd screw the lid back on. And everybody says she's crazy, she's lying and stuff like that. Anyway, she said, well, no, I can always tell when they did that because they'd leave 3 rocks on top of the horse feed. That stopped me in my tracks because that's what the trapper told me. Every time they robbed his track, they left 3 rocks on the top. And as soon as I read that, I realized this woman's telling the damn truth. I knew right away. Because this trapper would even begin to read anything somebody else had written online. I don't think he even has a computer. And how do you both tell the same story? It's too perfect. And it's gifting. It's gifting and it's a gesture. So right away, I was inclined to believe that person. It's kind of like the pictures of the face in the window. Everybody's, there's a debunking article right away. Well, I sent the picture to a guy who's actually seen one toe to toe while hunting. And he fires right back and says, yeah, that's one. That image is burned into his face. And I mean, it's pretty specific when you look at that thing, with the big flat nose. And also, too, I can tell you right now, like, if that's a model, he would have had to build a new one for every picture because the face is moving, the eye positions are different. And when you did see its eyes, they were those big, hollow black eye. Have you seen the road that's on the other side of the car?